Welcome back to another edition of New York Got Game. We are deep into trade season. Dexter Henry Bryan Fonseca here because we are deep into trade season. We are just over a week away from the NBA trade deadline. This is one of this man's favorite times of year. If you do not know, he is excited. He's working through all the deals. He's looking at it. But this is what we're going to do for the people today. We are going to come up with our Knicks trade wish list. Now, I want to be clear about something. Some parents out there who might be watching. You know how this goes. Your kid gives you a Christmas wish list. Doesn't mean you're going to get them everything on the wish list. Now, some of y'all might, and if you do and you got it like that, good for you. But that does not happen in the Henry household. That does not happen all the time.
Not in today's economy,
no.
Sir.
And look, sometimes you have a wish list. Doesn't mean you're going to get everything. It just means the things you could look at. Now, Knicks may have a wish list. The Knicks have some things they need to do to improve this roster. Mm-hmm. We'll go through the wish list. Maybe they accomplished a couple of these things. Maybe they don't. We'll see. But it's our wish list. You can feel free to chime, comment what you think about it. So we're going to look at some things on the Knicks wish list. We're going to look at some trades that can or could not happen, right? Some things just ain't going to work. Some things will work. We will look at all of that. So I'm just going to say what's at the top of the wish list. And it's at the top of a lot of Knicks fans' wish list. And we've talked about it for months. We've talked about it before the season starts. That is trading for Giannis. We understand why that is at the top of your wish list. Now, Brian, I think you and I agree on a very fundamental point here around the Knicks potentially acquiring Giannis.
Sure do.
And if you think it's going to be a straight-up deal with the Knicks and Bucks at this point at the trade deadline,
it's tough. It would tell you a lot about. It would tell you a lot about a good amount of things. One being that, first of all, let's clear this up first before we even get into that. The way that the Knicks are getting Giannis, if it were to happen, you need two things to happen. One, you need Giannis to actually request a trade and say, New York is where I want to be. New York is in the Knicks, not New York City as in, Brooklyn too. No, Nets fans, sorry. It would be the Knicks. And then two, you need Milwaukee to care. Because if Milwaukee doesn't care where Giannis wants to go, and this becomes a sweepstakes where it's just best trade package available, it's going to be hard given the lack of draft capital that the Knicks have following other deals, most notably Mikal Bridges' trade. Like, it's going to be hard to piece together a one-for-one, team-for-team package. So it's likely going to need a third team if you want to, quote, assemble the best package available. Mm-hmm. It's going to be very hard is the point, especially now, given that we're a week out from the trade deadline. And Giannis also has a calf strain currently right now. Self-diagnosed.
Which is interesting. Giannis also has changed his representation. Could have new representation coming on the way. That could be interesting. So, with all that being said, at the top of our wish list.
And there's one more detail that we just found out about before we started.
Yes.
From Tom Haberstroh, which is basically that Giannis is eligible for a 4-year, $275 million extension in October. However, in order to get that extension, he needs to be with the team for at least 6 months leading up to that extension, which means if he's traded, he can get it from his new team in October, whether it's New York, whether it's Miami, whether it's Toronto, whether it's somebody else. But if he stays in Milwaukee, he can get that extension, but he also, like, if he gets traded, he doesn't get that extension right away. He'll get an extension at some point, but not that extension, one, which is about $70 million per.
And all of that could don't aggregate me, could create a little bit of sense of urgency in the next 7 to 8 days.
He will be 32 in December.
This is all I'll say. So, with that being said, at the top of our Knicks trade wish list is trade for Giannis in a 3 or 4 team deal, because that's the only way I see this going down by the deadline. Yeah. Do I think if the Knicks want to do something straight up with the Bucks, could that happen at the start of the next NBA calendar year when the season is over at the draft? Yes. I think the Knicks have done a better chance. They would have an extra draft pick and swap that they could kick down the road. That makes things better for them. But right now, if we're talking about right now at the deadline, a 3 or 4 team deal for Giannis is probably the most likely. Now, what does that look like? How is that accomplished? Those are all the important questions here. Who's going? Who are you bringing back? Now, some of you out there might say, players be damned. Bring Giannis in. And I understand that to some degree, except doesn't all work exactly like that, right? The money that goes in and out, the Knicks have restrictions. They cannot take back more salary than they're sending out. So there are a whole bunch of things that the Knicks have to worry about here too, which does not make this easy. Now, we decided to cook up a little bit of a trade here.
A little bit, not a little bit.
It's a big trade. I want to give the credit to Brian because Brian cooked up the trade. He really
understanding the cap rules. Listen, everyone here, you need to be mindful of the second apron and how close the Knicks are to it.
Yes.
Like there are certain trade restrictions financially that you have, not just pick wise. So you have to color within the lines here. You have to play by the rules of not trying to get into the second apron because then it gets difficult and aggregating salary is a pain, and then things have to be even more precise to that point. And the Knicks, I'm sure, are going to try to do what they can to avoid the second apron. Now, if there's a world where they can get Giannis and be in the second apron, maybe they'll sign off on that. It makes things challenging down the line, but I really doubt. I don't think NBA teams want to be in the second apron, and I think from a larger big picture standpoint, this CBA is probably going to lead to a lockout because it's a mess.
Yeah, it is. And you want to be in the second apron when you feel like you definitively are among the 2 or 3 best contenders in the league for the title. Now, you might make the argument that Giannis puts you there, and I wouldn't necessarily say that you're wrong, depending on what else you have on the roster.
And how healthy he is.
And how healthy he is. So, Brian, go through the trade that you have, the multi-team deal of how the Knicks could potentially get Giannis.
You know how they say retweets don't equal endorsements? I will say trades don't equal endorsements.
That's fair.
Because we're trying to give you a roadmap of what this can look like, not what Dex wants or what I want or what this is how these things go. And oftentimes when these star player deals happen now, they can become 3, 4, 5 team deals at times. So one example of how this could work, I want to stress could and put in all the qualifiers before y'all go crazy, is the Knicks would get in this hypothetical deal, we'll call it, right? Is that the proper way to put it?
Hypothetical multi-team deal.
This involves the Pelicans. So the Knicks would walk away with Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jose Alvarado, and Kevon Looney's $8 million contract, which is very short term. And Jose Alvarado is going to be a free agent after this year. The Pelicans would get Karl Anthony Towns, Pacome Dadier, or Tyler Kolek. I feel like, in general, the Knicks might look at some teams and be like, take your pick. They probably would rather keep Kolek, given that he's shown anything so far. But is he a long-term piece? I don't know. And then some form of draft compensation, because if the Pelicans are doing this, yes, they're going to get draft compensation. Does it work out for them? I mean, you don't have big salaries on Derek Queen or Jeremiah Fears yet, who you want to build around. Trey Murphy's on a manageable contract. You could do something like this and then trade Jordan Poole and get something for him later, so it's not the end of the world. And Herb Jones is on a contract that's team-friendly-ish as well, even though it's long-term. The Bucks in this deal would get Zion Williamson, Gershon Yabusele, Deuce McBride, Yves Missi, the other of Dadier, Kolek, and draft compensation. So that's the difficult thing about this is both teams need to get some form of draft compensation for their participation in this, because ultimately you're the Knicks and you're walking out with the best player in the deal. And Zion is a guy who's kind of fallen under the radar now, but he kind of has an NFL contract where there are just outs. It's non-guaranteed the rest of the way through. If you're Milwaukee, you're like, this is a type of swing you can take because you're screwed anyway with the cap because you waive and stretch Damian Lillard and have $21 million every year dead on your books, dead for this year and the next 4 seasons. So Zion Williamson, that's one of the rare teams where he makes sense if they're not going to move forward with him.
Yeah, because you get a young player who, if he can stay healthy, which has been a big if with him, and has gotten into better shape.
And stay out of trouble.
That has some, that too.
Stay out of the streets.
Stay out of the streets. Zion be in these streets. And do that. And so there's some upside there for them. Now, in terms of the draft compensation, the Knicks are probably going to have to part with the Wizards pick this year that is going to convey into 2 seconds. Now, those will be 2 good seconds, so that's nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
And the Knicks could give that up. Now.
And how many swaps? 2.
And 2 swaps, which I think is absolutely going into this deal if you do this now. So that's a lot of the Knicks giving up. Now, the Pelicans might have to kick something. I don't know if it's a I don't know if it's a first rounder or some more seconds that go to the Bucks. Probably one first rounder.
The Bucks get the
into
most draft compensation.
The Bucks are going to get the most draft compensation. Maybe the Pelicans get another Knicks future second rounder because the Knicks do still have 7 of those, I believe, in total. So they could still trade some of those down the road. Maybe that helps. The Bucks are going to get the most of this draft compensation. Pelicans will get something to sweeten it for them being part of this. But this is the way this could go. Now, the question around all this stuff and all these multi-team trades, who says no and who says yes? That's what all this comes down to. Now, you're going to say Knicks fans, the Knicks will say yes. Sure.
Maybe. They might also say it's a lot because if I could sum it up from a Knicks perspective real quick before we continue. So if you're getting Giannis, Jose Alvarado, and Kevon Looney, what you're parting with is Towns, Dadier, and Kolek. Even though there's either or for one team, either or for the other, you're giving up both. And then also Gershon Yabusele, and then also Deuce McBride and the draft compensation.
Now, look, you're giving up 1, 2,
5 players.
4, 5 players, and you're getting back 3. You did not give up Wingstop, right? You did not give up Josh Hart. The core of that is still there. You had a good backup big in Kevon Looney, or might actually end up being starting big, and Jose Alvarado there too. So did you upgrade your bench? There's an argument that you did. Right? Did you get better defensively?
I would start Mitch.
There, you would also can argue in there. I don't love some lineups with Mitch and Giannis on the floor together. That makes me a little bit nervous offensively.
Unless you start Giannis at the 5, which, I mean, you could do that.
You could do that. This is a very interesting trade. The Bucks get a lot of salary flexibility. A lot of flexibility here with some young players. It gets them in a situation they want with that dead cap money you talked about, and they get the draft compensation. I hate to say it like this. This, to me, is not a bad trade, and I'm not saying it's just because the Knicks could get Giannis, but this might be as good as the Bucks can do. Again, going back to Brian's big if
the Knicks are involved.
If the Knicks are involved, and if Giannis says he wants out.
Right.
Because that's the big if in this, too. I just want to say, even though this is at the top of our wish list, because we think what Giannis's impact will be for the Knicks. And Brian has been someone who said, the window's small. You got to go for it now.
Windows today.
The window's today.
It's
the
now.
window is today or the next 7 days, if you want to say that.
Right.
Then this is the kind of deal you can do. I think it's a fair deal for all teams involved. If I'm being really honest, you need a little bit more specifics on the draft compensation. But the framework of this, to me, is a pretty fair deal. And I think this, if you're a Knicks fan who really wants Giannis, if you want him by the deadline, this framework or these kind of teams involved, this is how it's getting done. Straight up, not happening. And for those of you that want to say goodbye to Cat, well, here you are.
Under the parameters of, again, Giannis asking out and Giannis asking for the Knicks. Because if this is a true sweepstakes, I think this gets beat by somebody like Houston, who can then go and be like, all right, we have Alperen Sengun. Now what? Miami has Khalil Ware, who, I mean, he's imperfect, but clearly very talented. And they also have the matching salary and more draft capital. So does Houston. Like, Houston is more so about the players that they could offer. They could be like, take your pick between Amen Thompson and Alperen Sengun. I have a really good feeling that they'd rather trade Alperen Sengun as opposed to Amen Thompson.
I would be inclined to agree with that.
Yeah,
I would say that.
I
would definitely say that.
Strongly would think that's the case. But we don't know if they're going to get involved. And then obviously the other big joker out there is probably the Spurs, who just they've gotten guys for nothing. Guys like De'Aaron Fox, for example, they were able to draft. Obviously Victor Wembanyama, obviously able to draft Stephon Castle. Like, they have a ton of draft capital. They don't need to do anything right now. They could just ride this out and continue developing their team. Houston doesn't have that luxury because they traded for Kevin Durant, and then Fred VanVleet is also dealing with the torn ACL. You don't know if he's going to play in Houston again at any point. So these are the things that you have to assess when looking at it. Now, that being said, the team that I think is probably the most skittish about this, again, under the parameters that we've outlined, would probably be the Pelicans, because the Pelicans, like, Alvarado's solid. Like, he's proven. He's been in a playoff rotation before. Yves Missi, I know that he's kind of falling out of favor in terms of, like, long term, but ultimately he's still a good player, and he's on a rookie contract under control for 2 more years after this year. The only reason we don't think he's going to be there long term is because they drafted Derek Queen, and it doesn't look like you're going to play those guys together long term, but we'll see if anything changes. And then in terms of what you're getting back, like Karl Anthony Towns, don't know. don't like you can do that, but then are you going to sign him to the extension? But they're also not a destination that gets a level of talent like that.
Which might factor into their decision of what they want to do. Look, I could see them as a team having the most cause for pause in this situation. But again, this is just to give you guys a look at what kind of trade could work here for the Knicks, right?
You think everyone does it or no?
If Giannis really,
yeah,
because that's the big if. If Giannis wants out and says, I want New York, then I say yes. Because there might not be a world you get better than this if this is the case of what it happens. And this is also true in case we'll see who becomes his new agent. But if Rich Paul,
if he does actually
switch,
yeah,
if that happens,
and if he goes to Clutch, they get
Clutch,
things done.
Clutch has been proven to getting their clients what they want.
They get things done.
That's what it'll say. Okay, next on the wish list. And look, we've been talking about this. The Knicks trade for a point of attack defender. The Knicks' point of attack defense, it has been weak, mainly because, as Brian mentioned, I think it was last week, someone the Knicks traded for, 5 first-round picks, has not necessarily been as advertised. And the Knicks need help there. This is the area to upgrade. I would like to say this when we talk about this wish list. This is not a trade deadline that has to be all or anything. The Knicks are not going to be able to fix all their problems at the trade deadline. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I think you can go all in for a star like Giannis if you can get him in the right deal, which I still am not super high that it'll happen, or you can plug up some holes. Point of attack defender is one of the holes you got to plug up. And you're going to notice when we talk about some other things on the wish list, there's some overlap here. So, okay, who are we talking about that can look good as a point of attack defender? Well, one name Brian just mentioned before, Jose Alvarado, right? A guy who can play off the bench. We'll get into backup point guards as well, too. He can do that for you.
He's on that list.
You could talk about Keon Ellis, right? In terms of this. You could talk about a guy like Chris Dunn from the Clippers, Vince Williams Jr. from the Grizzlies, Ida Sumo from the Bulls, who might cost a little bit more.
Yeah.
Probably maybe the priciest. Drew Holiday, we'll get into as well, but he's costly.
Might be the priciest.
And Mark Stein has reported the Knicks have explored interest in Drew Holiday. DeAnthony Melton's another guy. We could talk about as well, coming off ACL injury, not necessarily in the rotation with Golden State, but he's a guy you could talk about.
He's been playing well lately.
As well, too.
He's been playing well lately.
Can shoot the ball for you as well, too.
Yeah.
When it comes to point of attack defenders, let's start with who I mentioned at the top, Jose Alvarado. Jose Alvarado is a guy that I like because he's a pest. He is your kind of player.
Yes, he is.
He's going to annoy you in the backcourt, but I also like that he can run your offense as a backup point guard. I like that he can shoot the three. I like there's a lot of things that Jose Alvarado could do. I mean, he's a really, really heady player, and he's solid, right? Like, he's a solid guy as a backup point guard who's going to know his role. And he's not bad in terms of playmaking as well, too. He can get into the paint. We know Mike Brown likes to talk about his sprays. He can do that, find guys outside. He's going to get steals. His nickname is one of the best nicknames in basketball, Grand Theft Alvarado. You like all that. I just love how he plays the game, and it doesn't hurt that he's from New York, right? You could bring him back home. He's going to understand what it means to play in the Garden, understand what it means to Knicks fans in the city to play for a winner. And look, I just think he could bring a lot of good energy. He fills 2 roles. We're going to get to trading for a backup point guard, so there's some overlap with him too, but he is a really solid backup point guard. I think one of the better ones in the league.
I agree with that.
And he is just a pest. And I mean that lovingly. He's a pest. You want a pest in your team. You said this last week. The Knicks need some irritants. They need some energy on this team. And you're going to see this as a theme of what Brian and I talk about in rebuilding this bench. Holiday's good. Is there any other names here that you like? I know you would love Drew. Not Holiday. Alvarado's good. I know you would love Alvarado here. I think you could go get him in a deal, and I don't think it will really cost you that much if you go after him. Maybe you try to get somebody else on the Pels, but there's some deals you can look at.
Jose Alvarado, I mean, can't help it, right? Like. The face of the Puerto Rican national team right now.
Why don't you bring your Puerto Rican flag?
Also, you know what I mean? Like, nearly broke his back in the AmeriCup for his country, for his people. You know what I mean? For his colonized territory. I think Jose Alvarado as a backup point guard who, as you mentioned, look, Brooklyn native, went to Christ the King, was a high level basketball player from here, went to Georgia Tech, and became an NBA player when I'm not sure how many people covering him in this city thought that was going to be the case for a sustainable period as well. Has never been like an amazing playmaker, but is somebody who can play make for others and has shown that he can do that. Was better at it last year, but also had a different role. He's been more complimentary this year. You know, you can put the ball in his hands. He can shoot the three. He can defend on the perimeter. The defense probably hasn't been like amazing this year statistically. Also, defense not measured well by perimeter or perimeter defense not measured well by statistics. But if you look at the team he's playing on in New Orleans, you don't really have a lot of room to be excellent on that end, just given how they play, the nature of the team, the turbulence that they've dealt with over the last couple seasons. You get him in a situation like this, also from the city, as you mentioned, but understands the city. Might have grown up a Knicks fan for all we know, but more than that, in terms of what he can provide on the floor, he's in your top 9 if you get him on the team. He might be your 9th man, but he's in your top 9. Like, he's somebody that you can get because you've seen him at least in some, not deep into the playoffs, but some form of high leverage situations, memorably with Chris Paul irritating him, like in a very important moment when they were playing against the Suns. He's had 2 trips to the playoffs, 10 playoff games in his career, although he played a much bigger role in his first trip, and that was about 4 or 5 seasons ago at this point. And I do think, Dex, if you're getting him, you have to look at somebody else you can get on the Pelicans, and we'll get to that position later, but like, I don't think he comes alone is the point. I think if you're doing that, you're trying to get multiple players from that team, because the Pelicans, honestly, they're probably looking to rebuild some draft capital, and they have guys that they can spin off into deals. We've already talked about them. We're going to talk about them again shortly. But just to go through this list, as you mentioned, he's not the only one. The Drew Holiday one is complicated because he's older and on a long-term contract and on the 17th season of his career. And you Knicks just got done making him look bad in a playoff series. So I'm not sure if that's one where you want to look at Drew Holiday and you're like, ugh.
I like Drew Holiday as a player. I love Drew Holiday as a player. Winner, great point of attack defender. He still can defend. I want to be very clear. He did not look as good last year in the playoffs, right? He looked a little bit old at times. He's played better this year. He looks healthier this year, but he's an older player, 35 and up. And I don't know if does he come in? Does he have the championship pedigree and fit right in the rotation? Sure. But Drew Holiday kind of really only works with the money he makes if you're going to send out a guy like a Karl-Anthony Towns in that kind of deal because of how much money he makes. And I think the Knicks might want to look at cheaper options. Now, somebody might say, hey, don't you think he's a better point of attack defender than Jose Alvarado? Yes.
Sure, yeah.
He's got a little,
and he can guard up.
And he can guard up. And yet what you've seen him do, we saw him on Cat, okay? So we've seen that. So we've seen that before. He can guard up. That is the thing I like. Maybe it's like when you go into that with an older player, now you're talking about the second apron stuff. And when you're getting into it for that, here's the thing. Jose Alvarado is a smaller player. I love Holiday. I love Holiday and what he could do as a player. But for me, I just think I don't know if I'm willing to invest as much in terms of the money. Now, if you're pairing him with somebody else and doing a deal with the Blazers, maybe shipping someone like Cat out, and you're talking about him and Jeremy Grant, a trade that our Stephen Bondi has floated out there, then that's a little bit different in terms of something I would look at. But if I had my preference, I would go to Jose Alvarado, and the reason I would go to Jose Alvarado is I just think it feels too neat. So
with Drew, a couple things to keep in mind. One, he will be 36 in June.
Yeah.
So if you get to the finals with him, happy 36th birthday, Drew Holiday. $32.4 million this year, $34.8 million next year. And the final year of his deal, there's a player option for his age 37 season for $37.2 million. Yeah. That's what makes it difficult. And then that's where you're talking about pairing him with another one of his teammates, which we can talk about. And then for the Knicks, this is why it's difficult contractually. Mikal Bridges is at 24.9. Drew Holiday essentially, this is crazy, makes what Jalen Brunson makes. Roughly. Jalen Brunson, slight bit more, just a couple million extra. And OG is at $39.5 million because Jalen Brunson famously is the third highest paid player on this team because he took a pay cut. But if you're getting to that number, like, yeah, you might need Mikal, and then you're throwing together a couple of your young guys, Gershon Yabusele, like you're kind of gutting your depth to get Drew Holiday, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
At age
unless,
35, no.
unless, as you mentioned, if it's Cat, and then we have a deal, we could talk about it, where it involves not just Drew, but Jeremy Grant as well.
Yeah, and this deal, we'll get to that in a second once we get to some other players.
Yeah.
We mentioned some other names. One other guy I want to mention, I want to bring it to you because I like the way he plays a little bit. Vince Williams Jr. from the Grizzlies. Mm-hmm. He's played some backup point guard. He's filled in at times for John Morant. Gritty player, I know, which fits Memphis, right? He's a gritty kind of player. The concern for me with him, shot can be a little bit inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
But is a tough player, can get into the paint, can, bang a little bit. He is good on defense. He will hound you on defense. He will play the passing lanes well and get some turnovers. Again, not the greatest outside shooter. Can do a little bit, cooking mid-range. He has shown he can hit some shots, but you'll see different stuff from him. One game, you'll see him 6 of 8 from the field. Next game, he's 1 of 10. He's very streaky in terms of his shot. But if you're looking for a point of attack defender and a guy can give you a little bit of offense off the bounce, you could do worse than him. I don't love him. I'd love it if his shooting was better.
That's the thing.
I'd love him if his shooting was better. I do like his defense. And I do think he's a tough player, and I do think he can bring, when you use the P word, some physicality that the Knicks need. I think he absolutely can do that, and he's not going to cost you that much. But ultimately, if it's me, I would rather get a Jose Alvarado.
Yeah.
Even though he's a smaller player, I still would rather Jose. I think Jose Alvarado is a better fit for this Knicks team. That's what I would say.
Vince Williams Jr., $2.3 million, so costs you nothing, basically, in terms of what you have to match. Like, it's just a minimum guy, young guy, whatever. Team option next year for 2.5. So he signed one of the contracts where it's off of a two-way, so they pay you like you're a second-round pick. They pay you nothing, basically, for a few years. Jose Alvarado, coincidentally, had to do that. Deuce McBride, as a matter of fact, to some extent, had to do that as well. Vince Williams Jr. this year is shooting 29% from three and 34% from the field.
Yeah.
He's had to play a bigger role offensively in Memphis. His offense is not the cleanest, but his assists are up a ton. They're at almost 5 a game in 21.5 minutes per game. And if you've watched the Memphis Grizzlies, like, he's had some big assist games, as you mentioned, when he's had to fill in a more significant role from a playmaking standpoint because John Morant can't play several games in a row, it seems, and even he's out right now. I think the last guy to really highlight here is probably Keon Ellis, because Keon Ellis has a relationship, obviously, with Mike Brown, having been coached by him in Sacramento a little bit. Keon Ellis also, pound for pound, I will say one of the better perimeter defenders on this list. Maybe you can switch with him a little bit. He's thin, though, so you're not going to play him you're not going to use him the way you would use a Drew Holiday to guard power forwards or anything like that. But what I'll say about Keon Ellis also is his offense is primarily going to be hitting a bunch of threes, which he can do that, which makes him more valuable than a Vince Williams Jr., even though he's not going to give you a ton on the ball, so to speak. But from three, he's 36% this season, 41.5% for his career. And he's averaging 3.3 3-point attempts per game in his career on less than 5 field goal attempts in general, which is to say his 3-point attempt rate is really high, 68% this season, and for his career, 70%. So he's taking a ton of threes relative to the field goals he takes. And then he can play defense because defense is how he's caught on to the league to begin with.
Now, the concern with him a little bit is size. He's a little bit slender in frame. He's been out of the Kings rotation, then back in. So it's been very interesting with him, but he can't shoot the ball. He's a better shooter in terms. If you're looking for a shooter with a point of attack defender, he's a really good option. I would probably put him number 2 on that list after Jose Alvarado. But there you go. Those are some point of attack
defenders. Free agent
defenders.
After this year also.
That too.
So $2.3 million. So,
yeah. So, he's due for maybe a little bit of a pay bump. Might not cost you that much. These are some good options. Again, not sexy names, but some good options. Now, some of this overlaps because we talked about Jose Alvarado, but also on the wish list is trading for a backup point guard, right? Now, some of you all might not feel the same way out there because you still believe in Tyler Kolek. I don't think Mike Brown does anymore. He did a couple weeks ago, and this is no shade to Tyler Kolek because Tyler Kolek played good, but the fact that he's now out the rotation, Brian, tells me that Mike Brown is like, okay, I don't know if I could play this guy in major playoff minutes. And I think the Knicks are evaluating that. And this is why you also have to look at a backup point guard. This is where Jose Alvarado, who we talked about, helps you as well.
A lot of the guys we talked about will
help you.
It's
There's
here
some
also,
so we're going to go very quickly through this because a lot of it's going to talk to. But listen, you can talk about these same guys, whether it's even Keon Ellis, who can play a little bit on the ball if you need to. Vince Williams Jr., we talked about him as well. Chris Dunn is another guy, but he's more in that Vince Williams Jr. range. Great defender, probably one of the best on-ball defenders in the league. So he does serve in that point of attack defender role. The shooting, that's
inconsistent. Better from three this year, 37%, but for his career, he's 33%. So it's like how much of that is real.
Yeah,
Chris Dunn is kind of like super DeLon Wright.
That's a great comp.
That's basically
that's a great comp.
Like if DeLon Wright put it all together, whatever. Chris Dunn, you got to remember, it was like a top 5, top 6 draft pick in 2016. And he was traded very quickly.
His offense is
why he spent some time out the league a little bit. Yeah. Like, you know, he's a rotation guy for his defense. Like, he's in the league because he's a very good perimeter defender. Like, your former coach and your current coach would love him.
Also want to be clear, Chris Dunn can run a team. He can play some good backup point guard. Look, if the Knicks went and got a Chris Dunn, would I be upset at it? No, you hope that the three-point shooting continues around there in that 37% range. That's something you would like. So, and there's some other names you mentioned.
I can give you his contract, too, by the way.
DeAnthony Melton as well. Colin Sexton was another guy
I added him.
is very interesting coming as well, too.
Colin Sexton's playing pretty well. He's one of these dudes, like, he's 6 feet tall, 6'1". He always figures out a way to be efficient scoring. Like, he's not a 50, 40, 90 guy, but he's damn close this year. But he's actually making the attempts. It's not like Mikal Bridges, who's like, he's very efficient, but it's because he doesn't always shoot that often.
I would still, if I'm going to go with a smaller guard, I actually would rather have Alvarado just because of what he gives you on defense than a Colin Sexton. So that's going to be my preference if I'm going for, give me the backup point guard that can also be a good point of attack defender. I'm going for value here.
Yeah.
Folks, that's what I'd be looking for, going for value.
Sexton averages 18 points a game for his career, which I think would be interesting for a lot of people. I think he'd be a much smaller Jordan Clarkson, but a more efficient version of him.
Yeah.
Like, if you could make Jordan Clarkson 6 feet, 6'1", and make him a lot more efficient, like, look, we're going to make you shorter. Yeah, we're going to make you shorter, but you're going to be much more efficient scorer. That would be Colin Sexton, who's averaging 14.5 points per game, which is almost a career low, but he's doing it in 23 minutes per game with the Charlotte Hornets team, who, when Brandon Miller, Con Knipple, and LaMelo Ball play, are 15-11 this year. They're not a bad team. They just got off to a rough start because of injuries. So Colin Sexton is also someone who I think Charlotte will try to move because he has an $18.9 million expiring contract this year, and they probably have some other things they'd like to do in the future. Chris Dunn, $5.4 million and then $5.6 million next year, which is about what Gershon Yabusele makes. So you might have to attach a little second rounder or something along those lines,
but
maybe a couple. But if you can't find the deal that you necessarily want and you're not getting Giannis, like a little, all right, Yabusele and a sweetener or two,
I would do it
for Chris Dunn.
I'd do it.
Like, that solves your backup point guard problem. I think.
And you hope that the shooting stays with him from downtown, but he's going to give you defense. Also solves the point of attack defender problem as well, too, for the Knicks. Okay, last two things on the wish list. One is trade for a backup big. Now, Brian has been saying the Knicks need another big for
since July.
Since July. He's been saying it. And this is where the Pelicans come into a lot. We brought the Pelicans up in terms of the Giannis multi-team trade. But there's a world in which you can go to the Pelicans and do some really good shopping here with the Pelicans, right? Yves Missi, who Brian brought up before, a really good young big. Could you get him away from the Pelicans, and what would that take? I'm just going to give you some of the names we have on our list. Yves Missi, Brook Lopez, who's very old.
I don't love that name, but we gotta include him.
You did it. John Collins, who doesn't play enough defense for my liking, and makes too much money.
Yeah.
There's that. There's Robert Williams. I say that's redundant because you're dealing with another center who's athletic and a rim runner, but also is always hurt, and the Knicks already have one of those.
But the caveat there is if you're dealing with Portland and Cat's going away, we have a trade that addresses
that could work. That
again, I don't love the. Yves Missi is the guy for me that I put on this list, and I'm like, that's
there's
the
another guy. I'm also not mad at another Pelican, Kevon Looney, if you get him because of his offensive rebounding prowess.
And he's a vet.
I'm not mad. He's a vet. Santi Aldama is another name I wouldn't mind either. Do not love defensively, Mr. Aldama.
Yeah.
But he does stretch the floor for you and gives you another look. There are things I can like about him. But let's talk about Yves Missi because we both like Yves Missi. I think he'd be a good fit. It addresses a need for the Knicks. I also think he's a guy you got to look at if you are moving on from Cat or not moving on from Cat. Can you get him in a package with a Jose Alvarado? This is a rim-running guy. This is a guy who finishes well at the rim. He's going to bang at you. He can give you a little bit defensively in terms of help. He's a lob threat, right? So you might say, oh, well, he's a little bit Mitchell Robinson redundant. Yeah, but you got to remember something.
Mm-hmm.
Mitchell Robinson, expiring contract.
Mm-hmm.
The Knicks have always tried to make prudent moves with an eye in the future, and we don't know what Mitchell Robinson's deal is going to be for next year. And if you're thinking long-term, can you get a young big in here? The Knicks have not given a lot of big money to their centers. They have been able to find guys and keep it moving at the 5 position. You wonder if this is the same. This is a guy who can give you some energy. We keep using the word energy and physicality. Yves Missi can bring you that off the bench. Can you pair him in a deal with a Jose Alvarado? If I'm the Knicks, I would be looking at that. Can you bring yourself another big and a backup point guard? There's another guy off the Pelicans we will talk about also as well that the Knicks could look at in trying to get. And so you wonder if this is a guy they can go after here as a backup big that I think could fit well. And, okay, what's it going to cost you if you go and get an Yves Missi, right, and try to get him from the Pelicans? Well, we have a trade that we put together.
Mm-hmm.
With the Knicks getting Jose Alvarado and Yves Missi, right? So get 2. The Knicks will get Jose Alvarado and Yves Missi. Pelicans get Gershon Yabusele and Pacome Dadier or Tyler Kolek. So as Brian said, take your pick of those guys and likely draft compensation. Now, I'm going to say this. If you're the Knicks, I'm the Pelicans, I'm like, yo, you're going to come up off that Wizards first-round pick that's going to convey in the 2 seconds here. We know that's going to convey because the Wizards are not trying to win games. We've seen this already. So that is a very attractive pick for the Pelicans. You're giving them expiring contract in Gershon Yabusele. You're giving them a young player, whether they like Tyler Kolek. We know they like Jeremiah Fears, but maybe they think Kolek could be a backer for them. Yeah. Maybe they want Dadier, another wing guy. Who maybe that's more attractive to them. You're giving them something. You're giving them 2 seconds. It hurts, but you're fortifying your bench. You're having a young center under team control for the next 2 seasons, well, this season and next season. And then you also get a backup point guard that's low cost, and you could choose to re-sign next season. You could take some of the money that you were giving to Gershon Yabusele, and there I might add, if you're thinking about the future here long term, if you're not bringing back Mitch, you now have your center. Right. That's another $13 million you have. You can redistribute that money elsewhere. It's a trade that could work well for the Knicks in the now and also the future. So this is the trade I really like, and I think if you can somehow package Alvarado and Missi, and then or Alvarado and another couple of guys we'll talk to. There's another guy we'll talk to about in the next segment. That could be very interesting for the Knicks in terms of the team building.
It's my favorite one on the list, and it's the only one where it's like without hesitation I would do it. Now, if I'm the Pels, do I want a swap also? Like, I would try to probably get one. I don't know if they will successfully.
I mean, try. You'll get the phone hung up on you, too. You know what I'm saying? Like, that could happen.
Alvarado is going to be a free agent, but Missi, as you mentioned, 2 more years of team control after this at very little bit of money. It's like over $3 million next year and then like $5.5 million the year after, the final year before you have to extend him. And I think because of the reasons that you laid out, like this is the best point to me. Mitchell Robinson, if we're being honest, and we know how important he is, I don't know if the Knicks are going to re-sign him. And it probably is more likely they don't than they do, given the number of what that could end up being. So in doing this, you're also addressing that situation, not just your current lack of a backup big situation aside from Mitchell Robinson. So you're doing that, and then Alvarado we've already talked about. To me, that's like the best package you could come up with. Why would they want Gershon Yabusele? They're probably like, hey, if you're giving us draft pick compensation, whatever, will take it. And Yabusele's contract is also not absurd. It's $5.5 million this year. Next year is not much more than that, and it's not going to kill the Pelicans to have him. And there's a world where he's just a better fit somewhere else. Like that, sometimes that just kind of happens. So it's something that could make sense for both worlds. I'd like to know who the Pelicans would choose between the prospects in that deal. Maybe they want Huck Porty, because if they're giving up Misi, maybe they want Huck Porty instead. Like that's something that could happen too. They'd have to sign him pretty soon, sooner than they would otherwise. But that's something they could do as well. Who knows? But I think that is my favorite deal on this list. And if they can come away from the trade deadline with Jose Alvarado and Yves Misi, that addresses two things. Misi, as you mentioned, is just super bouncy, very active big, nearly medaled in Afrobasket this year. If you saw him play for Cameroon, he was actually really good in that role too. But obviously with the Pelicans, he's seen less of a role this year just because Derek Queen and they're trying to figure out things to do with their interior. But he's a solid center who may top out as just an energy backup center, but that's fine. You need some of those guys in order to win at a high level.
Yeah, and I think when you have those guys, those kind of rim-running fives, if you can keep them at low cost, like, again, the Knicks have really done this with their team since Nerlens Noel, as they've rotated through, and then Isaiah Hartenstein, who obviously cashed in on big bucks, Mitchell Robinson, pairing the two of them.
Jericho Sims, kind of.
Jericho Sims. The Knicks have always figured out how to work these with these centers. So I think getting one and addressing the future while also shoring up a need in the backcourt to back up, I think it's a good thing. You get a point of attack defender, you get a backup point guard, and you get a backup big, right? Yeah. So these are the ways you can look at things and try to make trades for values. If you sometimes for the Knicks, I think likely at this trade deadline it's going to be about winning on the margins. So I think a trade like this is likely, more likely, and the framework of this could actually happen. I actually think it's a really good trade that addresses a lot for the Knicks.
And from a Pelican standpoint, they're $1.9 million under the tax and $3.6 million.
They'd love to stay there
under the first apron. Yeah, so like technically you could go, hey, Kolek and Dadier and Yabusele, but they're not going to want to become a tax team. They don't want to become a tax team.
They don't want to become a tax team. That's why you're going to probably likely have to sweeten the pot with some good picks. That's where that Wizards pick kind of becomes valuable for the Knicks to do it here. Now, some people may say that's a little too rich for their blood. I say, look, are you trying to fortify the bench or not? That has to be, I think, if you can't get Giannis, which he, again, was at the top of our wish list, that has to be priority number 2 right there in terms of however you do this, whether it's adding a backup, point of attack defender, a backup point guard, backup center, or the next place we're going to go to right now, trade for a wing, right? Trade for a wing that can help this team. Now, there's some names here that I think are really good, and the one guy we did not mention off the Pelicans, it's a Nova guy that a lot of people have linked to, is Saddiq Bey. Saddiq Bey is another guy. I think he could be packaged if the Knicks can go this way. And you could say, hey, Alvarado with Saddiq Bey. I don't think that's a bad deal for the Knicks as well either. Saddiq Bey is a guy who can help you stretch the floor. He brings the P word again, physicality. He's going to get inside that middle area, bang a little bit, pull up on you, and can score. Plays very physical, likes to play a lot of bully ball, is tough, can also stretch the floor from the outside. So I like a lot of what he brings. Now, defensively, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He can leave a lot to be desired sometimes, particularly if he gets caught in the perimeter. But he can guard threes decently at times and can play up and guard some fours. And I think that's helpful for the Knicks with that positional flexibility. But I think what you like is he can shoot the ball. He's a guy you can see fitting well into his offense off the bench. Literally what he would be doing is replacing Guerschon Yabusele. Guerschon Yabusele, who's pretty much done nothing
maybe
for the Knicks this season. We'll get to that in a second. But he is not given what you thought. But in theory, he should be doing the things that you thought Guerschon Yabusele could do. So can you get him and pair him with a Jose Alvarado? Now, a couple other people I want to mention because there's a bunch of good people on this list.
Yeah.
Another guy that I think you could look at, I've seen Knicks fans bring this up, and I've seen this rumored, Najee Marshall.
Love him.
Najee Marshall,
he's such
on the Mavericks.
He's such a northeast basketball player.
Yes, he is.
And he's from Jersey. So.
He's a Jersey guy, northeast basketball player. And Knicks fans, you might remember on Martin Luther King Day, he was cooking.
Yeah.
He was cooking the Knicks. He cooked the Knicks on Martin Luther King Day. His game is a little bit similar to Saddiq Bey's in that he's going to bring some physicality. He can get inside.
More physicality.
More physicality. I actually would agree with that.
His shooting, that's where it's a little bit of an adventure. He's had some moments this year from three. He's 30% from three, only for his career and this year, as he makes one there. But at the same time, Najee Marshall is a guy who, if you want rim pressure, if you want attacks to the basket, somebody to get downhill, play bully ball, bully your smaller defenders on the other side on switches, being able to cut as well, he can do those things. He's really outperforming his contract right now. I think contracts are obviously a big part of this as well. Sadiq Bey, $6.1 million this year, $6.4 million next year. Najee Marshall is at $9 million this year and $9.4 million next year, and he looks like a guy who can be top 7 on a contender today, based on the way he's playing this year, based on the way he is getting downhill, finishing 55% of shots this season, even though he's not shooting that well from three. But the free throw shooting is there. For somebody who gets to the foul line 6.3 times per 100 possessions, he's making 79% from the free throw line. So he's making those count for the most part. Like every 5 free throws, he's making 4. You're good with that for somebody who gets downhill. So if you're not going to shoot a ton of threes and you're not going to shoot well from 3, you want somebody to be able to get downhill, finish at the rim, and he does both of those things really well.
Something the Knicks need. They need somebody else that can handle the ball and get downhill, because as we talked about even last week, we know just looking at the stats and just the eye test, that's not coming from Mikal Bridges. You would like to see that come a little bit more.
That's the problem.
But if you can get a player that can help you with that.
We should not be talking about this list.
What's that?
If guys were performing to what if guys were performing the way they should be.
To what we thought they should do.
Right.
We would not be talking about certain things on this list, but we're now trying to find those things in other players and other needs, particularly bench or role players, but this is how you have to win on the margins, right? This is what you got to do. One other guy I'd like to mention here.
Both of those guys, by the way, they're going to be costly, I think.
Yeah, because they're going to be very coveted. What do people want in the league, around the league? Wings, right? Wings who can give you a little bit of, creation with the ball in their hand, could shoot a little bit the way you can see Sadiq Bey do from the outside. Najee Marshall, not as much as you mentioned, Brian.
Yeah.
But there's still good wings that can help playoff teams, and they're going to be coveted. And some of those guys are going to fetch, maybe both of them, Sadiq Bey might fetch a first-round pick.
And, swap at a minimum. That's the thing. And both of them are outperforming their contracts and are signed for next year, both under $10 million. Sadiq Bey way under $10 million, not even close. As mentioned, 6.4. Najee Marshall is like right under that. He's in the $9 million-ish range, so that's the other piece of it. So you're gonna have to pay for somebody like that.
Yep, you're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to pay for that. One other guy I want to mention too, got Justin Champagnie, who is a lower cost guy that's playing for the Wizards. Now, many Knicks fans remember Julian Champagnie, his twin brother, who killed the Knicks from downtown in that New Year's Eve game against the Spurs. But Justin Champagnie, out of the great University of Pittsburgh, is a very good role player. You're a hustle guy. He's going to clean up a lot. He's okay from three-point land. He's not really going to get it. You see a nice pass there from another pick guy, Bub Carrington. He cuts, moves extremely well without the ball, which is something you like. He can occasionally knock down the three from you or help stretch the floor. He is very active on defense. Not a great defender, but very active. But he's the kind of guy, a wing off the bench, that can do a lot of good things for you. He also rebounds very well for his position, something we know the Knicks like to do and do very well on the offensive glass. True. There are things with Justin Champagnie that I think could bode well for the Knicks as an energy guy coming off the bench. Is he going to cost you a lot? You might be able to get him for just a second rounder. He's not a guy that could cost you a lot. Maybe you flip somebody like a Gershon Yabusele and try to get another player off of the Wizards as well too. But again, he's a guy that could bring a lot of energy for the Knickerbockers. And again, he's not a sexy name, but I think it's a name that you could look at if you want to add a wing or try to add a depth piece to this rotation to fortify that bench. You could do worse than Justin Champagnie.
By the way, Brooklyn native as well.
Yes.
So all about bringing guys home.
hey, bring Jose Alvarado, bring Justin Champagnie home. It'll be all good. I wouldn't mind that.
$2.3 million this year, $2.7 million next year, and then just $3 million after a team option. So that's
basically 2 more years of team control past this one. That also makes him very valuable.
And the other thing is he's plug and play for the Wizards, but also in the direction that they're moving, they're going to see who fits around Trae Young when he does eventually play. You don't know what his future is going to be there, so we'll see ultimately what that looks like. I will also mention, for Champagnie, He leads the Wizards in rebounding per 100 possessions at 14.5, which is really good for a wing, and it's also very Nick-like in terms of what you want the team's identity to be. So I think it's a good buy low spot. You may want to see who else you can get on that roster from that team, but it's something that may cost a little bit also because, as you mentioned, he is young, but also the contract is very, very good, and the Wizards probably don't want to part with that super easily.
No, they probably don't. So those are the 5 things on our wish list that we looked at. Just want to run through, because we have them here, a couple of the trades that Brian and I put up real quickly. You can let us know what you think about this in the comments. But we looked at the trade, building on their trade that our Stephen Bondi had thrown out there last week about the Knicks with the Blazers. The Knicks would get Drew Holiday, Jeremy Grant, and Robert Williams in this deal.
Don't like this one.
That we talked about.
My least favorite.
Blazers get Cat, Bridges, Dottier, or Kolek, and possible draft compensation. Now, I don't like this either because you're taking on a lot of money with Holiday, a lot of money with Grant, and then Robert Williams, and his uncertainty there, and you're also pairing him still with Mitchell Robinson. I don't like this. I don't think this does much for the Knicks unless you're just saying we're getting off the Cat and Bridges experiment, but then you're getting older players with about the same money, but just why you I don't like this. No, don't like it.
The purpose of it, though, is to outline how difficult a Drew Holiday trade could be, because now people are looking at, how can they get Drew Holiday? And it's like, you may also take Jeremy Grant back, and then it gets weird. And do the Blazers want Karl-Anthony Towns? Would they rather, you want Towns and Bridges? Like, that's going to cost you. You know what I mean? Like, but that's to outline what that is.
It's so difficult.
To me, the Drew thing is not something I would pursue, personally. I just don't, I don't see enough upside.
I'm with you. And then another one that Brian cooked up here.
Because of the money.
I like this trade a little bit, though. It's not a bad one to me. Knicks here,
I don't like it for Memphis.
Would give up
that much.
Cat, Dottier, and Kolek to the Grizzlies. The Knicks would then get Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Clark, John Conchar, and likely draft compensation. So
I like it more for the Knicks than for the Grizzlies.
I do. I always like Brandon Clark. He's been recovering since tearing his Achilles and coming back.
When he plays, he's solid.
He's very solid.
Gets hurt a lot.
Jaren Jackson Jr., you're going to miss Cat's rebounding. You're going to miss his rebounding if you send him out there. But he does stretch the floor well. He does shoot good volume from 3. He does hit a lot of threes, so you're not losing the shooting. Brandon Clark's a very good player. It's an interesting trade.
Conchar's a good rebounder. Really good rebounder.
This, to me, if you make this kind of trade, and I'm glad you put this one here, this is we need to shake some stuff up because we're not liking the vibe around maybe Cat and what's going on, and we want to get off the offensive fouls and all that stuff. I see the reason for this trade. Does it change a lot? It's more of the shake-up in vibes. This is a vibes kind of trade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is a vibes kind of trade. So I get the point of it, but also this is another good one by Brian showing you how difficult it is to move and deal Cat in any kind of trade. You have to get back somebody like Triple J who's making a lot of money and find some other pieces that work around it. I see what you did there with the framework. I would be fine with it as a Knicks fan. If you want to change it up, you could do worse than this because I don't think it changes up too much philosophically about how you would play, but you're just changing around some pieces. So I'm not necessarily against it.
Jaren Jackson Jr. $35 million this year, and then his extension starts $49 million, then 50,
that's
then 52,
the thing,
and then 53.5. So that's why I put likely draft compensation because I think Memphis, listen, Jaren Jackson Jr. is a really good player, although his lack of rebounding will piss you off. Josh Hart's a better rebounder than him. You have other guys who are better rebounders than him on this team. Obviously, Mitchell Robinson, that goes without saying. But on top of that, you're inheriting that extension, and you're giving Memphis to some degree, like this is part of trading, you're giving them a get-out-of-jail-free card. Not that the contract is awful, but he's already going to, he'll be overpaid by the time he's on that deal based on what we know. And Karl-Anthony Towns is extension eligible, but does not have an extension
and
yet.
And they don't want to extend it.
I don't think. So I don't know. It's all about what Memphis wants to do. Do you want, if you're keeping John Morant, do you want him with Towns? I don't know. Memphis looks like they're a team that's about to shake things up. Don't know in what direction. Cedric Howard looks like a player. They really like Zach Edey. That front office does. But otherwise, don't know. But that's one where if you can do that, that's one that I probably would pull the trigger on.
All right, we will see. What is at the top of your Knicks wish list for the trade deadline? We're just over a week away from the NBA trade deadline. A lot to look at with the Knicks, what they will do, what they can't do.
Can't wait.
We will see what they do. We have a lot coming up in the next week in terms of trade coverage, so stay tuned with us here at New York Got Game. That is Bryan Fonseca. I'm Dexter Henry. Thanks for rocking with us. Let us know what you think in the comments. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you want to see the Knicks do with the trade
deadline? And give us your
suggestions
realistic ones.
We will discuss that as well, too. And we'll catch y'all next time. Another edition of New York Got Game.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.